Amazing. Okay. Welcome to the Insight. Sorry, I had to switch our recording on. So some of you will be joining the replay and others of you like you're all on live, which is so exciting. So this is the first free session for 2023. I'm going to be doing 3 different free sessions this year. This is ideally for people who haven't stepped into any of my masterclasses just yet, or for those who are really like curious about exploring more of them this year and have done some in the past and really want to see where everything is heading this year. So today's one is called The Insight, and it's a rapid insight into how mindset is going to affect your manifestation and the importance of actually incorporating shadow work and inner child healing into your manifestation journey to allow you to continue being magnetic. So there is a massive, like, heavy focus around just amplifying your vibration, cleaning up limiting beliefs. And I feel like there's this big stigma that, or this big thought that limiting beliefs is as far as it goes with mindset and manifestation. And that's not actually necessarily the case. So anyone who watched Momentum the other day would kind of somewhat understand that. So just quickly remembering that power sessions in my world are a place to understand the foundations before unraveling things in a masterclass. So they're not as deep as a masterclass. They are a short session. They're a taste test of what you would explore in my online coaching space and mentorships. So remember to just practice discernment when these short sessions come up, because they are very generalized. They're not going into too far into the specifics. So some of it will be relevant to you, some of it will be relevant to someone else. And I just invite everyone to remember that you are welcome to use the chat boxes, but just make sure that anything that you share in there, that if you are someone else who is witnessing that you are very respectful towards that, and that you are just allowing people to feel heard and seen in that, and not necessarily using this as a space to coach someone else or question them on that or place any judgment. So it needs to be a safe container if you are using the chat box there. It's just something that's really important here. All right, so tonight's session, we're going to be talking about 3 different things. We're going to talk about what our mindset is responsible for in manifestation, what our wounds have to do with those limitations, and how we're going to incorporate mindset and shadow work in the manifestation journey. So what we actually do to be able to combine the two, what we look at, and yeah. So we are first going to chat about the limitations of our mindset. So we are only holding the capacity and the awareness of 5% of our mindset. And this almost, a lot of people might think that I say this on repeat, but it is one of the biggest facts that we need to make sure that we actually pay attention to. So there is 95% of our mindset that is controlling our reactions, decisions, and all of our thoughts and emotions that we don't have control of, or we may not even have awareness of. So 95%. So of all the data that we have within our mindset, there's only 5% that we can actually consciously manipulate to work with our manifestations. So that's a massive portion of our mindset where we really need to be doing some cleanup, because if you're not conscious of what that part's doing, we need to really clean up the part that we do have access to bring more of that forward, so we can leave less room for sabotage. So you can't expand your awareness beyond the 5%, but what you can do is do a declutter, condense what you do need to keep on to, process and get rid of what you don't, and bring other things forward. And it's going to really give you a massive element of control back in your manifestations. Many people, like, unknowingly, so completely unconscious, allow their body to actually provide their conscious mind with a completely different narrative behind the decision making and the intentions behind what they're actually manifesting and the way that they react and respond. And a lot of the time, if we haven't actually started to implement shadow work into manifestation, and at the point that I'm at in my journey, in like manifestation in itself, I actually physically can't see how people could manifest to their full potential without doing shadow work. Like, full transparency there. I do not believe that if you don't do shadow work, you could get the full potential out of it, because you cannot physically be completely aware of the why behind your reactions without doing shadow work so that you can actually expand your consciousness and your awareness. So a lot of people who don't have this consciousness of where their reactions are actually stemming from, they are actually living in a state of just reacting to life rather than building life. So that's not the intention behind manifestation at all. Intention behind manifestation is life creation. It's about creating the life that we actually want to attract and the things that we want to attract. And so to do that, we really need to have a full picture. We really need to be able to have the element of control over our life that we want, because we don't just want to be this passenger in our life. We want to get the most out of it that we can. So when we bring consciousness to the shadows, we're removing the power that they have over our actions. And a lot of those shadows are controlled by triggers. And if we don't have awareness around them, we don't have the ability to stall them, reflect on them, and then change the narrative or the pathway ahead of us. So it's really important that we look at mindset in manifestation so that we can actually remove any power from anything that may be. Just gonna check someone's. All right, cool. I just have to mute someone. Yeah, so it's really important that we remove the power from the shadows and any trigger responses or anything like that, and that we're not just suppressing them. A lot of the time, people can go into manifestation and get stuck in toxic positivity, where they're like, I need to be in a high vibration all the time to manifest and attract. And that's not true, because there can be so much going on that is suppressed or repressed that we don't consciously realize is still affecting everything, because the subconscious mind is like, don't tell them about that. Don't show them that. That's going to stress them out and that's going to throw them off. And right now, it's so important to them that they just stay in this high vibe state. So it's so important that we are really looking at more than just like what we can change in this like reality of now. And we're actually looking at processing anything else that our mind could just be like dealing with in the background. So your subconscious mind is just one big source of data collection. It is literally like a command center, and it's actively just waiting to serve you in the best interest of you, your survival, your safety, your success. And it literally will analyze everything. It will overanalyze so much before you've even had a chance to look at it yourself. It's just gonna like try and really take control of things or come to conclusions before you've had a chance to. So now I want to talk about what our wounds have to do with the limitations. So we're just talking about shadows. So when we talk about shadows, we're going to come into our inner child wounds. So this is where I say it's so important to bring in inner child healing, which is directly linked with shadow work. And our feeling of worthiness within our manifestations is really impacted by our wounds. It's really impacted by our wounds. So our shadows are really like formed based on our life experiences, but also how we were raised, the conversations that we were a part of, how we were treated in those conversations, how we reacted to those conversations, the internal messages as a child that we took from those conversations. And we start to form all these like wounds. And some of these I've listed on the screen. So there's trust, neglect, fear of abandonment, rejection, guilt. And we heavily, like as a society, will lean on these to make all of our decisions without even needing to like process it in our conscious thoughts in that couple of seconds as you're replying to something. Your subconscious has already done that. And it probably did it like well and truly before you even got to that part of the conversation. Your subconscious is going to be completely analyzing things before it even happens. And so your wounds have the ability to have more time to respond and control the situation than you actually do in that consciousness. So it's so important to recognize that it is always going to be there faster than you are until you actually are conscious of the way that your subconscious is working and the mindset that it's coming from. So many people will, who experience any of these ones that I've put in here, will actually become either codependent, hyper independent, or hyper productive. And then that's going to create further issues on how they lead their manifestations and what they will and won't leap for. So with codependence, where this is shown is that it's not about like, I need someone to do my manifestations for me. Codependence in manifestation is like on having someone else validate that you're on track, having someone else keep your momentum going, having someone else like persist and like keep you accountable, that's going to be an area of codependence. It may be that you really like depend on seeing someone else having done something really successfully before you even like attempt it. It may be that you are really codependent in making sure that you always stay in the safe zone. So that's going to come out for someone who has maybe like a really deep guilt wound, who doesn't feel like they can like ask for help, where they're just going to be like, I can't ask for help. So I'm just going to try and like find all the evidence, something that's really safe, something I wouldn't need help with, and I'm just going to follow that. Okay. Where it comes to hyper independent wounds coming into our manifestations is that we're like, I will not accept help. Okay, I either feel guilty asking for it or I don't want it. I don't need it. I've been let down far too many times. And I am going to do my own thing. I'm going to go hard at it because I'm capable. I'm going to fall hard. I'm going to do all these things, but I'm going to do it on my own. Okay, so hyper independence generally comes from this really big built up, like, if no one else does it, it's got to be me. Like, it's not going to happen otherwise. Or like this feeling of like, I just can't ask anyone else because I'm going to be a burden. So hyper independence, like this is where you can see inner child wounds and all of that in your shadows, like can really come back in. And these are the types of things that aren't just coming up in limiting beliefs. If I said to you, what limiting beliefs do you have that you can earn more money? Codependence and hyper independence are probably not going to come up in that, because you're going to come up with really surface level things. And it might be like, I don't have enough time to go and have another job or something like that. So you can see that's not going to give you the same answer. It's not going to give you the same results. So you need to explore the wounds in a, different setting with shadow work to really actually get the depths of what's actually sabotaging your manifestations. And these are the types of conversations that can't just come up in like looking at how to raise my vibration. It's got nothing to do with, did I dress well today? Do I feel good? Did I look after myself today? Am I in a good mindset? Like, nothing to do with it, because your mindset, like how you feel in just your mood itself, is not going to change your level of hyper independence. That is something you've actually got to process. Whether you felt great that morning or whether you're tired and need a coffee is not going to fix that. It's not that simple. It's not something that you can just alter with your vibration. And you can have an amazing vibration, like I said before, and still have a whole heap of reasons why your subconscious is not going to let you take that experience. So important to look at that. Most people start out reacting to life by manifesting either through someone else's vision or what they believe someone will accept as their own vision. So most people start out in follower energy, regardless. Because even if you're someone who is like, I'm going to break cycles, I'm going to manifest like the complete opposite of my family and what they do, you're reacting to it. You haven't actually necessarily set out by processing it. You're just reacting to life. You're going, I'm going to abandon this vision and I'm going to opt for this vision, instead of I'm going to heal this vision and create my own. Okay, so they're two different things. Most people start out by reacting or by just going off what they believe someone else will accept, or they will just go out by going through someone else's vision altogether. So those new to shadow work, we really need to actually step back from just actively manifesting if we want to get out of our own way and recalibrate ourselves. Because if you look at like how you manifested last year and all the tools that you use, if you've been using those same tools for 6 years and nothing different, you're not going to get where you want to be in 10 years. You're going to get to where you are now. Okay, because all of those got you to here. Now you need change to get somewhere else. So it's really important that as you go with manifestation, you are adapting your tools. You are moving through and changing the process. You're not just going, how can I look at this in another way? You're actually going through and changing up the process. So it's really important that we actually recalibrate ourselves by stripping down our conditioning to then truly see what it is that we desire and not what someone taught us to desire. That's a massive thing. A lot of people will go off what they were taught was safe, what they were taught was going to receive acceptance or love, what they were taught was right or wrong. And as we know, there's actually no true definition, unless you're looking at like law, of what is right and wrong. There's no true definition. We decide that, okay? But the thing is that we don't decide it. the parents decide it, the grandparents decide it, and all of that, and it comes back down. And so it's really important to remember that what you have learnt, you need to actually look at whether it came from a credible source. You may have parents who taught you some amazing things, and don't discredit that. You may also have some things that they have taught through a wounded space that you actually need to go, actually, I don't agree with that, and that's not true, and I'm going to explore that. So with your manifestations, always know that someone can only help lead you through something as deep as like they have actually led themselves. If they have never opened a business, they've never run a business, they are not going to be able to take you the whole entire way through your vision for opening a business. They might be able to take you through the basics of what they understand, but they're never going to take you to the end. So it's really important that when we are looking at all of this, we're making sure that we're stripping back everything and then rebuilding it off something that is credible, of where we've actually got, you know, our own evidence for ourselves, not just someone else's evidence, because their evidence will be based off their experience. So the last thing that I really want to talk about here, and I'm just going to pull it off the screen, is I really want to talk about, where did my screen go? Incorporating your mindset and shadow work, and like how we actually incorporate these two things. So I want to talk about dealing with the inner child, because this is where I believe a lot of the foundations stem from birth. So we go through a bit of a process before actually coming back to manifestation. And it's almost like you feel like you take a little bit of a step back from manifestation, but really it's just allowing yourself to take a deep moment of reflection and come back. So you start out by reflecting on your awareness of the current 5% and what's happening in this 5%. When we're looking at, say, for example, you want to start manifesting more money, we're going to start looking with our shadow work into wealth. All right. So we're just going to look at wealth in general, not just making more money. So you're going to start with reflection. Then you're going to bring awareness to what you consciously can see are issues, blockages, all of this. And then you would step into something like a masterclass, and you would have a whole heap of other things picked at and reflected back to you. Okay, so that's then going to trigger a whole new stem of thought processes. It's now going to really, you know, sit there and go like, hang on a second, I didn't think about this. I didn't think about this. I didn't think about this. So it's there. Masterclasses are there to provoke you to bring bigger awareness. All right. So masterclasses are not there to complete your journey. They're not there to just be like, oh, you're healed. What they're there is to provoke your awareness and be like, here is a whole heap of things that's going to take your journey deeper. Now use these tools. All right. So there is a level of work that comes from being in a masterclass. And it's really up to you how deep you take it. But the depths what you can go to in a masterclass are going to collapse time on what you could do if you were to read books for the next 5 years, or what you could do if you were to try and work on it yourself, because you're only ever working from the conscious 5%. Because if you read a book, you're choosing that book. That's coming from your 5%. Okay. So there's always going to be a level of need for you to actually bring external opinions, external awareness in, because that's how we're really going to get deeper than just our conscious mindset. So that's so important. Once we get past awareness, so we've really started to see like a bigger picture here, we're going to start having compassion for ourselves. This is where we're really going to see our inner child and be like, okay, hang on a second, I was too hard on myself. I realized I wasn't properly educated on that. I realized I wasn't actually properly educated on how to use my wealth properly. Or I realized I wasn't actually properly educated on how to use my money to make money, or how, you know, I wasn't educated on how to use it responsibly, or how to hold on to it, or how to value it, or how to invest it. Like, so you have a level of compassion. So this is in an area where a lot of people turn to blame. A lot of people go to the part of awareness and they just go like, oh, that all came from that person. And they leave it at that, and they go, oh, okay, yeah, I don't know this because, you know, that person didn't teach me that. And a lot of people will leave it at that. Shadow work is not about finding a blame game. It's about finding the source and then processing it, but still having compassion for where this all began. So that person, it's really important to look at, were they actually taught how to look after wealth properly? What made them use it in that way? Did they have a bad experience? Were they not educated on it? Were they a child who was never able to ask questions? So there we get a bigger level of compassion, as we start to realize that our parents are actually just as wounded as us. Their parents were just as wounded as them. So we actually start to realize that everything really passes down just through the conversations and the expectations that are happening in our awareness and in our upbringing. Something that I would so encourage you to all look into. There was a study that recently came out that actually talked about the fact that emotional regulation is the first thing you should do before talk therapy. It is the first thing. And they actually said that going straight into talk therapy is actually extremely dangerous for the nervous system, because what they said is that you're just going to hit all of the triggers. And if you've ever been to a therapy session and you walk in and you walk out and you feel horrible, this is why. So what happens is they say that we really need to work on actually understanding our triggers, understanding our nervous system, learning how to regulate ourselves, how to disconnect from the emotions, but also process them, so that when we are actually in a time of actually going back through those experiences, we are not just reliving and re-triggering ourselves. We're actually able to completely disconnect and just look at it from a, external point of view and actually just evaluate it. And the ego is not just storing a secondary amount of trauma in the body. A lot of people are not successful just going straight into talk therapy, because they'll go in, they'll relive the event, and they'll walk out of it the same way I did as a teenager, where you go, that's not productive because I didn't actually physically do anything other than feel heard, but I didn't actually understand anything any deeper. So it's really important that we actually do things in a proper process. So when we're going to do our mindset, it's really important we come back and we find some tools that are going to regulate our nervous system, and then go into shadow work or then go into therapy or anything like that. We need to use that as an amplification, but we first need to make sure that we actually bring ourselves back to a safe zone where our nervous system is not going to just trigger the ego and the subconscious to team up and shut everything down. You need to be, when you go into a level of wanting to change your manifestation and your mindset and everything, you need to be in receiving mode. You have to be in receiving mode. If you are someone who goes into wanting to manifest and you're just like, oh, I just want to learn like the process, I just want to do all the things, and you're just like, I just want to follow the checklist, that's not in receiving mode. You're up for learning, but you're not in receiving mode. Someone who's actually in receiving mode is going to sit there and be like, I am ready to actually see my own issues in this situation. I'm actually ready to look at myself in the mirror. Most people probably wouldn't spend much time looking at themselves, like actually just in the mirror and just looking at themselves and really looking at the type of person they are. I remember saying to a friend on the weekend, I said, we celebrate so much in the tangible. And I said to him, because he was telling me about how important mindset is to him at the moment, and I said, in this last year, do you feel that your mindset has changed? And he said, yes. And I said, but in this last year, did you celebrate that? He said, no. I said, most people wouldn't. Most people would go and celebrate having more money in the bank. Most people would go and celebrate buying a house. Most people would go and celebrate getting a new car. Most people wouldn't sit there and actually celebrate the change in mindset. How many people fixate on being depressed? How many people fixate on when they're feeling really down? How many people actually turn around and celebrate when they pull themselves out of that? Not many people. So when it comes to manifestation, it's really important we don't discredit the mindset. The mindset controls all of this, everything. You wouldn't be able to manifest without a mindset. You physically can't. If you're in a state of like complete overwhelm, your body is going to be like, we're not welcoming anything in. Like, it doesn't matter how much you say that you desire all these things, you don't actually have the energetic capacity to hold that, because you're telling me you're too overwhelmed. So mindset is the biggest key behind it, not whether or not you just have a good amount of crystals around you in vibration. So we get to this process, we're processing everything, we're focusing on the emotional regulation, we're processing all the shadows and the wounds and everything. And this part will feel very heavy. It's meant to, okay? It's going to be very like, there's going to be a lot of emotions. The great thing about this is that emotion is trapped within the body. We're actually going to get to this point, we're going to release a lot. Right? There's a lot of stuff that's stored within all our tissues, and that actually is creating a lot of illness and disease within us. As we start to do that, we're going to reduce it. And what happens when you're in good health, suddenly a lot more opportunities open up to you. Suddenly you're well enough to participate in that. You're well enough to participate in that. You're well enough to actually feel like you even want to attend, that event. It affects everything. Our mindset is so important. So we get to this point, we process everything, and then we go, okay, now what do I actually believe about this? So you're going to reprogram all of these beliefs that have come from these wounds. And then you move through and you've reprogrammed it. And you go through a bit of an ego death because you realize that everything's not the way you originally thought it was. And you've got to process that. And that's shocking. And then you push through, because the biggest thing with shadow work and with manifestation is having an intention. You push through this part where you go, okay, everything wasn't how I thought it was, but I'm open to seeing what it's like now. And you reprogram, and you feel great. And then you come to the next manifestation, you're going to do it all over again. So it is a process. It is a journey. And shadow work is definitely not something that you do once and then like that's the end of it, because you only know 5%. So you're always going to be digging up more stuff, just as you're always going to have more life experiences. So there's more things that are constantly going to be changing. But once we've reprogrammed everything, we get to this point of liberation. We get to this point where we forgive our past selves. We forgive the fact that we didn't know better. We forgive that, our limiting beliefs. We forgive the fact that we might have sabotaged a whole heap of stuff because we didn't realize that our subconscious was sabotaging it. So we go through this forgiveness phase. We forgive all the other people who, they weren't able to teach us differently because they themselves weren't supported. And we go through that. We have all the compassion all over again. We feel great, liberated and everything like that. Okay. So in our manifestation journey, our mindset is going to affect our entire ability to receive from the universe. And you can work on your vibration literally as much as you want. But if your subconscious feels that something is too risky and it comes offered to you in a way that doesn't line up with the process you have on paper, you're probably just going to reject that opportunity completely or miss the opportunities that were within the main one. So there might be other little opportunities attached to it, and you'll probably just completely walk away from it. Limiting beliefs, like it's a really common thing that we look at in manifestation, but often we're going to look at these without the shadow work. And so we only get those surface level responses as to where everything stemmed from. Shadow work actually allows us to get to the root of the problem from an accumulation of wounds that were there before that event or that desire. So when we come into shadow work, we're not just pulling apart the manifestation that you're doing now, because the ego is going to try and like protect this vision or sabotage this vision. When it comes to shadow work, we're looking at like the topic beyond that. We're looking at a bigger picture, and therefore the ego is not just trying to find not financial gain, trying to find gain. Okay, they're not trying to protect anything. They're just looking at it as a research. So, for example, it's really easy to research someone else and tell if they are narcissistic. It's really hard for a narcissist to research themselves. Why? Because their ego is going to find every single way to say that they're not a narcissist. But if you look at someone else, your ego is going to pick up on everything, okay? Because it is not going to damage your own personal identification. It's not going to damage how you feel about yourself. So whenever we're doing shadow work, it's really important that we're not just looking at like what we're manifesting right now. It's really important we look at like a bigger picture, and we're looking at wounds deeper than that. We're not just looking at the limiting beliefs. A lot of people will teach the process, they'll teach the limiting beliefs, and they don't go any further. This is the part where the sabotage actually happens, not in the little narratives that your conscious mind thinks it has, not in the decision that you thought you had. It's really a lot further down. So so important that we actually get to the root of all of those issues. So there's many times in manifestation where we're too focused on the current conscious limitations and not actually actively looking at those factors that were many years ago. So for example, you might have a strong abandonment or rejection wound from your childhood, and perhaps your parents were like emotionally unavailable, or they weren't invested in conversation with you on anything beyond their own personal interest. And so therefore now as an adult, you'll only bring up conversation based around like with them around what you feel they're interested in to receive, like that connection from them. So by doing so, you've just sabotaged yourself the desire to develop a deeper connection with your parent because you're not being fully transparent in who you are and what's important to you. You're just building a connection based off what's important to them. And you're actually also disempowering them the ability to change their own mindset and be more supportive. So maybe they actually are trying to be more supportive, but you're still treating them based off the way that you knew them 20 years ago. There's a lot of unspoken changes in mindset because we don't celebrate mindset changes. A lot of people are scared to contradict themselves. If you see me contradict something in my Instagram feed, that's good. That means I grew. That means I changed my mind. That means I learned something. A lot of people are too afraid to be contradictive, to actually change what they said a year ago. So it's really important that we allow people to open up and say where they've changed their mindset, because otherwise we can disempower them from having a conversation with us that we thought they weren't open to, that they actually are. So fear like really drives our ability to connect with other people. So fear is something we look at a lot in shadow work. So the last thing that I want to leave you here with is shadow work and mindset and manifestation, and like what it actually allows us to do. So it allows us to recognize repetitive insecurities that our subconscious is like writing a narrative for to sabotage. It will allow us to heal and process wounds that prevent us from fully immersing in the experience or take a leap. It will allow us to sorry, I'm losing my words here, to be able to fully celebrate our manifestation rather than just downplay them. So if you were just like, like mom, I bought this new house and and you're probably just going to downplay it because you know that it's in a suburb she doesn't like. Okay. So shadow work allows you to just build that confidence to just be like, I am excited about this. I am going to celebrate it. And I really don't care what they think, but I'm just going to share it because I'm excited and I'm going to play in that energy. So shadow work's really important for that. All right. It is going to allow us to see where we're manifesting things that are not actually healthy for us or beneficial for our long-term pathway. There's so many things that we manifest out of feeling like it's going to save us or fix something, and it's actually not what we should be manifesting, and it's not really getting to know our true selves. We're just trying to piece things together to just get along. So shadow work's really also going to stop us from rushing manifestation timelines before integrating lessons. There's a lot of times where the universe is intentionally slowing you down and you will still try and persist. So my friends will hear me say, I never hit my head on the brick wall twice. Like I will find a way around it. But in manifestation, this is only true to some extent. It's really important to actually be able to differentiate the times where you need to change your patterns and the times where the universe is saying, slow down, there's something I need you to to learn. Okay. There are going to be times in manifestation where no matter how right you have it, things need to go wrong because the universe wants you to learn something now for something else later. It doesn't matter what you did. You could have done it all perfectly. It still would have blown up. Okay. Retrograde is the biggest example of that. If you are keeping a friendship in your life that is not supposed to be there, you can guarantee just about every disagreement will blow up in that season purely because the universe is like, you are not listening to me. It doesn't matter how nice you try to be with these people. This is not aligned. So it's really important to recognize when we're rushing things or we're ignoring lessons. So shadow work is also going to allow us to deepen our experience with manifestation and get to know what we really desire, not just what we feel is going to bring us temporary happiness. And this is seen so much, so much. There are people who play small who are like, I'm only going to manifest a new handbag. They don't truly believe they are worthy of manifesting you know, their dream home or manifesting their dream job. They truly don't believe that they can do it. And, you know, an example of this is that you might be like, "Oh, I really want this, you know, job that is like it's all the way over there, it's in another city and it requires commute and stuff." And you might actually completely sabotage yourself just based off your own fears of other people, what they're going to see you as for having that job. We talk about this in momentum, and that if you don't feel that someone's going to support you in being wealthy, you're not going to be wealthy. You're going to find every way to not publicly be seen as that, to avoid shame. So it's really like shadow work just gets into like every single little like nitty gritty bit and like crack. And the thing that I love about shadow work becoming more and more normalized is that even where you feel people may not be doing it, they are always going to be impacted by your shadow work. Every conversation you have, you're going to word things differently. Every conversation, you're going to go in with more intention. Every conversation, you're going to pull things apart more. You're going to understand how to react and respond to people without triggering them or where you need to trigger them. The thing that I love about shadow work is that no one can hide. When everything is like out on the table, like if you know that that person has a really big guilt wound and you've learned shadow work, you're going to understand that, and you're going to understand how to respond to that without making them feel like they're the worst person in the world for asking for help. Or you're going to learn how to offer help that is in a way that doesn't make them feel that. It's going to impact so much in your manifestations, your friends' manifestations, your family's manifestations, even if they're not actively doing the work. Shadow work is like just the gift that keeps on giving. Like it just impacts everything. And with manifestation, like I said, it's this far in my journey and everything that I've done, I cannot viably see how people could get the most out of their journey just doing the original steps. Those steps that are there that you're taught in manifestation are there to teach tangible evidence to yourself and to your ego. And we talk about that in the Momentum Masterclass and really go into all of that. And that's really important. It's still really important to use all of those tools, but it's really important, most of all, to look at our mindset more than just the limiting beliefs, because the limiting beliefs are only this portion. And you got 95% sitting there that you've got no idea what's going on. So if you can get into shadow work and you can start to, you know, collapse this little bit, get rid of it a little bit, and then bring some more in from this side, you know, you're going to start to get a lot more control over your manifestations, and you're going to start to actually be able to bring in the things that you really, truly want. So I'm going to leave you there with that for this conversation. And I really hope you enjoyed this session. There is going to be a replay if you want to rewatch it. If you are someone who has not already jumped into the master classes, Momentum is where I would jump in now. It is available as a replay already, and it's going to teach you a lot more on moving away from just the tools and tangible evidence, and really start to look at some of those wounds that are coming through, and to take your power back in your manifestation journey. There's also some other sessions this year that are really going to help directly with manifestation. But in general, I would say that literally all of these sessions are going to help you in any way, shape, or form anyway, because any form of shadow work is really going to work with your mindset. And that is, at the end of the day, the ultimate tool that we need to call in that life that we desire and everything else around it. So yeah, that is it from me. I hope you guys had an amazing session. And if you're interested in jumping into any classes and you want to have a chat, send me a message. But otherwise, thank you so much for sitting and joining me for this session. I can see that a few of you got quite a few notes out of the session, which I'm so happy about. And yeah, have an amazing evening.